Back out by Jamie Baker. Yushkevich wheels it back in. Lindros lost. Archibald takes him out of the play. Up with it is Recchi. Walks in front. Shot one, knocked down. Rebound, score! Lindros!
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah. Just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit summitpublicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey.
And we are back. It is Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 162. As Flyers veterans have reported, they've taken their physicals, some more physical than other, and the rookie camp period is over, and now they're all kind of absorbed into the first training camp for John Tortorella and adjusting to life under Torts. And unfortunately, in the process of that, the Flyers have announced that Sean Couturier is being evaluated for, at first they said an upper body injury, but Crossing Broad and Snow The Goalie's Anthony Sanfilippo has reported that Sean is dealing with a herniated disc, and he thinks, according to his sources, that it is a minimum of 3 months. They're getting a second opinion on that. We'll talk more about that with a teammate in just a moment. Let's introduce the panel. We're all stacked today from overseas. It is Chef B. How are you, man?
Tired from that 19-hour horrific return home, 2-3 flight cancellations. I'm just so happy to have something else to talk to other than hockey, other than boarding passes. So, yeah.
Yes. Make sure you check them for an extra $30. And, of course, as always, the great Dan Silver.
I'm ready. Bring it on. Opening puck drop. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's around the corner. Right before we introduce Russ, let's just remind you that the O&B Puckcast can be followed on Twitter at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck, and on 12 podcast platforms, iHeart, Apple, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it. And of course, we have our own YouTube channel. If you could subscribe, follow whatever is appropriate, and give us a rating, a 5-star rating. It really helps move us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcast, particularly on Apple. We'll read our next 5-star rating like another show does. And speaking of that other show, the aforementioned Snow The Goalie from Crossing Broad, it is Russ Joy.
Guys, I just want to say right off the bat, a lot of positivity coming in this episode, and in solidarity with the Philadelphia Flyers, dropping opening night tickets 50%. I'm going to charge you guys 50% of my normal appearance fee here on the O&B Puckcast. So, right. I mean,
wait, did they really drop?
It's a deal, and I do this out of love. I do this out of admiration, and I just feel like it's the right in these unprecedented times. It's a great thing to do. These unprecedented Philadelphia Flyers times. I just, this is how I give back.
Wait, what did they do? They dropped ticket prices 50%
Oh
for
yeah,
everyone?
they've been sending emails out to people saying opening night tickets are up to 50% off. You didn't know that?
As a season ticket holder, this just makes me feel so warm and fuzzy. It's impossible selling tickets now online, and that's just going to make it more impossible. So
isn't that great? It's great.
It's really great.
Now, in fairness, though, there is a question. What the hell's wrong with you? Why did you re-up your tickets? At some point, the onus falls back on you. You know, for years, I would sit back and say, all right, I get it. Lifeblood of the organization, very important to have season ticket holders. What in God's creation caused you at any point in the last 2 years to say, yeah, I'm going to re-up? Do you have like center ice tickets? Like, where are these? I swear if you say these are in the top level, you can touch the wall behind you. We've got issues. Where are these tickets at?
But here's the thing. No, let's hear me out.
What happened was, this is not good.
They are they're the cheapest price point in the stadium. They're the best row on the aisle and the cheapest price point in the stadium, which is the only reason that last year I actually made money selling the tickets. Because with the following on Twitter, I sell tickets to people on Twitter. There's no fees. So I actually made a profit last year on the tickets. Now, I was pretty sure I was not going to be able to make a profit this year, but I'm a sick horse racing gambler, and I was not going to renew. But right when the deadline came up, me and my buddy hit this big bet for like $80,000. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give them my season. It's 2 tickets. It's $3,500. It's not like an exorbitant amount of money. So I was like, you know what? I've already sold $500 worth. The rest is a wash, whatever. I'm doing my best to support the Flyers organization. What are you guys doing to support the Flyers organization?
Yeah, I just want to point out, I feel like the people who are listening at home need to know that poor Isaiah and Chef look physically ill hearing the 80,000. And also the giving the tickets away. I don't know, just an idea. Why aren't you pawning off a few of these tickets on behalf of the O&B Puckcast? Follow, subscribe.
I do.
What's happening?
No, I do. I give tickets away.
I give your show for you. What happened to you? I
do. I give tickets away. I give them to charity. There's some really good charities out there. Actually, Black Girls Hockey is a really good charity that I give tickets to sometimes. I am going to be at the point this year where I'm just going to be probably begging people to take my tickets, and I will probably not renew them next year.
Yeah, I was going to say time out here, because listen, our listens have been going up. All right, so if you're giving away tickets to the Flyers, I don't know. That might be a reverse
casual. We just hit an $80,000 win.
$80,000. Like if you hit for $80,000, I'm thinking cars, maybe a down payment on a shore house or something. But no, a Flyer season. Let's piss away our money there. So, but otherwise, hey, you could chalk it up to just a bad bet you didn't make later on. So
easy come, easy go. Yeah, easy come, easy go.
Okay, so I guess we got to get it. Yeah, exactly. You're a poet, you don't know it.
Now, I just got it, guys. A lot of highs this year, not a lot of lows. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a great year. We should talk about this team. The hype is real, guys. Philadelphia Flyers. Flyers hockey is back, baby.
Well, all right. Now let's get the 411 on the organizational kind of fallout from Coots' injury. And Russ, I got to ask you, it's just like every year, Chuck Fletcher has maneuvered the Flyers into a position where they have non-star players that they're so dependent upon that, like Humpty Dumpty, if these players are injured, they're going to fall apart and they can't be put back together. First, if Matt Niskanen doesn't come back, Ivan Provorov won't be Ivan Provorov. And then it's Ryan Ellis. Now it's like the Flyers center depth is the worst in the NHL because now they don't have Sean Couturier, even though they've had all these years to either acquire or draft somebody and develop them into a reasonable replacement for maybe half a season. So like when Colorado loses Landeskog for a long time, they still have a lot of players and so much time has elapsed. Why is it, how can we rationalize that this organization doesn't realize that they are spinning their wheels when something like this is so crushing? It's like people were thinking this season's already over.
Well, I think it's probably, before we get into anything here, we really should thank our lucky stars that we have Chuck Fletcher in Philadelphia. A real hockey executive, one with a ton of experience, one who has a heritage. His father, I don't know if you knew this, was a front office executive in this league. He's built great relationships with other GMs and front offices, so much so that when he needs to, shed salary in a trade, he's got multiple friends in the league who are willing to help out facilitate a trade. He's got great relationships with agents who don't rake him over the coals with ridiculous length of contracts or giving out stupid no movement clauses or ridiculous AAV. Like, he doesn't do that, and I think that we really just need to thank our lucky star. I can't do it, guys.
Yeah, this motif
sucks.
is not going to work.
He's bad. He's bad. He is a. I genuinely had a moment over on Snow the Goalie a couple days ago or yesterday, whenever we did our emergency podcast.
Yeah.
And I said, and I think it was after we stopped, and I looked at Ant and Bundy because they're older than I am, and I said, granted, I have a smaller frame of reference, but I said, I need to jog my memory here as a Philadelphia sports fan. I do not believe I have ever seen a Philadelphia sports front office executive do a worse job and be allowed to continue for as long as Chuck Fletcher has. And he is by far the worst GM I can remember for the Flyers in my time as a fan. He is, he really has to hang on to the hope that by the time he is inevitably fired, that his draft picks are going to be the one thing that are going to save his legacy. And the best comparison I have to this is Ed Wade. Everybody hated Ed Wade, the former Phillies GM. Hated Ed Wade. He could never make that move to get the team over the top. You bring in Pat Gillick. Pat Gillick makes a few moves. You win a World Series. Everybody loves Pat Gillick. And then eventually, time looked back favorably on Ed Wade because they said the core of the World Series team and even the core of the next couple years, those real deep run teams, World Series in 2009, CS, then DS, that was a Ed Wade drafted core. The only way that history will look favorably on Chuck Fletcher in this city is if he is responsible for drafting the core that will contend for half a decade or a decade, but it has to happen after he's gone. That honestly is where we're at on that front. He has done as poor of a job as you can. The team was $2 million over the cap as of a week ago. And when you look at this team and stack it up against, what you would consider to be a playoff contender, a cup contender, how many of the guys on this team, if we assume that everybody had been healthy, are guys that you build a cup contending team around? It's none of the defensemen. You could probably say that Couturier would be he could be a 1C on some other teams, but he's probably a 2C, right? He's your shutdown center. He's your 200-foot guy that you can always rely on in all situations. But that's it. There isn't another guy. Carter Hart's not the goalie on a Stanley Cup winning team right now. He could develop into that. Ivan Fedotov might have been, but Chuck Fletcher decided to, have the guy sign a contract while Russia invaded Ukraine. So I don't know. I would say that's probably not the best time to do that. Kind of proved to not be great. But there's just there are so many missteps and misplayed moments here with this guy in charge that they built the season on hope and praying that no one was going to get injured. And here we are before camp, and he's hurt. The rumor is that they're going to try to get Farabee back in here as quickly as possible, which could potentially cause legitimate damage. Ryan Ellis is MIA. It's not good, guys. It's not. And I said, the last time I was on the show, I said, I want to come on here and talk about something positive. So I am going to try to be positive. But you got to give me something positive to work with. Chuck Fletcher has not done that, which makes it a very hard sell to the fan base and for the people who are going to cover the team and talk about them for the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did a positive show when we were talking about the kids with Bill Meltzer last week. Dan and I had a lot of fun because there's no real commitment. You can only project. You can see that this player is faster, this guy's stronger. That's hope. But now the veterans are here, and we have expectations. We want to try and be realistic with them. But right out of the gate, they're kind of seemingly back in the same hole that they've been over the last few years, Chef.
You basically described Schrodinger's Flyers because at that point you have all these young players that could be something. Whether they are, hey, they're an NHL player while not being an NHL player at the same time. There's so much problem. Yep. It's like looking at under the tree at Christmas. You see all these presents. You're thinking, look at all the great stuff I got. And then you unwrap it and you realize, oh, that's another pair of socks. I already have a pair of socks. In fact, I already have 5 pairs of socks. And now I got 5 exactly the same kind of pair. Like that's what I feel like the drafting, that the leftover of the Hextall era and a little bit of what we've seen of Chuck so far have been basically different size variations of the same player. If you read to me, I think I've even said it before, to me, if you look on their list, on their player profiles or scouting reports or whatever, it says, good hockey IQ, skates fairly okay, could get better, all this stuff. It's basically, it's the same person could have wrote the same thing and you could just change the names. So I think that's the biggest flaw of this organization is they drafted safe. They thought they were going to play it safe the whole time. They never reached for somebody out there that could be a lot better than they thought they were going to be, made those exotic trades to get them. I think that's where they faltered the most.
Dan, maybe you got a different slant on that.
Well, as fans of this franchise organization for a while as we have been, for me, it's not as much about this season. Like, I don't think anyone was expecting this team to be any good this season. The problem is, and we've talked about this, is that there's really no hope for the future. Like, at least when Ron Hextall was here, we were being sort of sold this bill of goods that you could sort of buy into, that he was stockpiling draft picks and all these kids were going to be, we're going to have this tremendous depth. We got the number 2 pick. We got Nolan Patrick. There was hope, right? There was hope during that period. Now there's really no hope. We don't have any top tier prospects. We have got, we're spent to the cap, and not just this season, but far into the future with the contracts with Couturier, Ellis, Hayes, Ristolainen, Provorov, Atkinson,
Delorier.
Delorier. We're
love
tied
the no
into
movement.
We're tied into
that
these
is a GM who is fighting for players' rights when the NHLPA will not. So you know what, guys? Can we just take a moment to give him a round of applause?
We're handing out money, and there's very little hope for the future. And the biggest problem this season is honestly that they're not going to be bad enough to probably get one of the top 3 picks in the draft. Because you look at Chicago hasn't even been, they haven't been hiding the fact that they're trading everyone away. They want to be one of the worst 3 teams. Montreal's got a really bad roster once you get past maybe their top line of good young players. And Arizona is like a borderline AHL team. So the problem is, and this was reflected in the article that The Athletic put out today that talked about every team, and they talked about the Flyers, and the article was basically saying that being a Flyers fan is being worse than any other fan of any other team in the league, because they don't really have a chance at the playoffs. But on the other hand, they also are probably not bad enough to be bottom 3. And we've talked about this a lot. It's this middle ground that gives very little hope for the future. And then you talk about Chuck's draft picks, and look, I used to watch a lot of juniors games and I had a pretty good sense of some of these kids they were drafting. I don't watch as many of those games anymore, but they drafted Cutter Gauthier 5th. I look at all the prospect pundits and all their ratings of currently drafted prospects, and Gauthier is literally like the 15th or 20th best prospect, according to them, that was drafted this year. And we talked about how he kind of shot up the charts late in the season. It's a big risk taking that kid when David Jiricek was available, who looks like he could be a really good impact right-handed defenseman. So you talk about Chuck's draft picks, that Cutter Gauthier pick was out on a ledge, and we're going to see what happens. But there's just not much hope. Bobby Brink looked decent last season. Now he's basically out for almost all of this coming season with a hip injury. It's not fun to be a Flyers fan these days. We'll get into some things later in the show that might be fun to talk about, but there's really not a whole lot of it.
I have good news. I have good news on the prospects. To my knowledge, they all still have both legs. We have no Lieutenant Dan's situations right now, so we can feel good about that. I just, what's funny? I thought about this when Chef was saying about, like this guy is, a potential player. He could be an NHLer or he could be nothing. There's like an old episode of Family Guy where Peter is confronted with, you can have a boat or you can have the mystery box. And he really is thinking about it. And Lois looks at him and she says, Peter, take the boat. And he goes, I don't know, Lois.
I really want the box.
A boat's a boat, but this is a mystery box. It could be anything. It could be a boat. That's Chuck Fletcher. Like, this is the thing that drives me nuts. You had this offseason, you had multiple players who were out there who could have filled some needs, at least in the short term. Now, would they have been a great long-term play? No. Is Johnny Gaudreau a great long-term play? No. Does his addition perhaps take some of the pressure off some of the young kids that you're going to have to rely on so heavily? It does. Does it take some of the pressure off of the centers who are now going to have to move up the lineup again? It would have. The thing that pissed me off was the being a non-factor in the DeBrincat sweepstakes. And the thing that I kept having thrown back at me was, it's only 2 years. It's only 2 years. So you don't know. You don't know what he's going to do. Fine. Remind me what Tony DeAngelo's deal is. Is he locked in for 7 years? No, he's on a short-term deal. You traded multiple draft picks for a guy who you probably could have just waited to hit RFA, and Carolina wouldn't have matched. So, like, I just sit back and I say, you had a 40-goal scorer out there that you could have moved assets for in DeBrincat. You had a guy who I don't think was ever going to come close to replicating his career season in Gaudreau, who also wanted to play here. And you chose to go with neither option, which is a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it pays off. But, like, this is bad. Like, this is just, like, organizational malpractice is what we have witnessed with Chuck Fletcher at the helm. And there is no discernible plan. And that's the thing that, like, I think has led fans from being angry to so apathetic. Like, the level of apathy that exists with this fan base right now is typically like what happens in October, November, maybe December. But, like, it's happening before the season. You have to try to screw up this bad. There is nothing to look forward to, right? Because what are we looking at, guys? Kevin Hayes is the 1C? Okay. He's got 3 core muscle injuries in the last 18 months. We really think that's going to work? You've got Morgan Frost, who everybody's been hoping is going to take the next step. Okay. What else you got, guys? It's just, you got to try to sell this fan base. Like, all right, Owen Tippett. Owen Tippett might be a positive spot. That could be one guy to look forward to. Wade Allison, if he can ever somehow stay healthy. That might be a second guy. Joel Farabee, if they don't, run him out there with, like, pins hanging out of his body because, they pulled him off the gurney so that he could get out there earlier because they need to try to put butts in seats. All right, there's 3. What else are people coming out to see? Cam Atkinson seems like a nice guy. 4. What else, guys? Like, seriously, if you had to shell out money and you didn't have the $80,000 bet hit like Dan, what are you coming out to Wells Fargo Center to see? What do you look forward to?
Cole Caulfield? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm
Too
sorry.
soon. Too soon. I would say this. I think, to speak to your first point, like about the never making the move, I think I'm going to take a guess at how many guys in this room, in this chat right now, how many of you would have threw away that first round pick that was reportedly asked for Gaudreau? Would you have done it? Anyone in this room right here? Because apparently that was the asking price, right?
Yeah, but I would have had another first round pick because I would have traded Ristolainen. So I would have had 2 picks in the coffers.
I mean, the problem
there's never a plan. Yeah, go ahead.
The problem really is that we sit around and we can disagree about minor things. Would we have traded the first round pick this year for DeBrincat or not? Should we have moved JVR with a first round pick? The problem is that big picture, when you look at this franchise, there are no good answers. There are no good answers. Okay, we trade a first round pick for DeBrincat. So we don't have our first round pick. We get DeBrincat and he leaves after 2 years, right? Because it's a shit organization. That's not a good answer. Right? Keeping the first round pick and taking a guy who may or may not have an impact at all. Like, okay, I guess that's an okay answer, but it's not really good for now. Like there's no good answers because of the situation that this team is in with the salary cap in the long term. There's no good answers. There is no way to turn this franchise around unless, as Bill Matz said to me once, dumb shit happens all the time. Like literally the only hope that there is dumb shit happens all the time. That's it. But actual hockey decisions, there's nothing good. Like, someone
there's
on
no
Twitter
short term.
Yesterday they should buy out Sean Couturier. We'd be paying him until 2038. Like, obviously not a good answer, but like, there's nothing good to do here. What are we supposed to do?
Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, it's just the shame is, and you try really hard to come up with reasons to support the team. You come up with reasons. Like I sat here and I thought to myself, because we're talking about like credentials and everything. I'm like, do I really want to go down and cover this team? No, I don't. Like the amount of time that I would spend in the car, it'd be like 3.5 hours round trip. That's 3 to 3.5 hours in my car I'm not spending with my wife and kids. That's then the game, which is another 2 to 3 hours, right? So let's say I leave my house at 4 o'clock. I'm going to sit down there in press row. I'm going to write a story maybe, or I'm going to write about betting stuff that I do for my actual paid job. And I'm going to do that stuff. And then I'm going to get home at, 12, 12:30, 1. Was that worth it? Was that a good way to spend my time? No. If this team were competitive, sure. But like, even from my standpoint, as like somebody who enjoyed covering the team a few years ago and like pre-pandemic, there's no reason to go down, like there's not. And if you're a fan, it's just a shame. Cause like, I think the thing that gets messy with media is you're supposed to put your fan hat away. And some people cover a team and they didn't grow up in that market, so they don't have that fan fiber. But the one thing that you have connecting every person who covers a team in any capacity is that it is more fun and enjoyable to feel like what you are doing has value. And the having value is so tied to how that team performs, that they're in the hunt, that people are reading your articles, or they're watching your show, or they're listening to your show because you can have an intelligent discussion about how do we make this better? How does this team get to that next level? How does this team contend? And this organization has allowed Chuck Fletcher to take every potential option off the table. Like, he should have been gone after last season. Not this one that just ended. So technically 2 seasons ago, he should have been done. And they made the mistake of letting him stay. They made the mistake of letting him do a draft. They let him handle the Claude Giroux trade. They let him stick around to give Ristolainen a goofy contract. And then they kept doubling down on the incompetence, letting him run this offseason, but then sitting at a table and saying that we're going to do an aggressive retool. We can do this on the fly. He made Dave Scott look like an asshole. He made him look like an idiot, a jackass, whatever you want to call him. I do think
Russ,
that,
wasn't it the other way around though? Wasn't it Dave Scott the one who originally said aggressive retool, and did it appear? It did to my eyes that Chuck Fletcher has been trying to to push that away, and eventually
no. Fletcher sold this organization and the higher ups that they could do this. Dave Scott doesn't know what's going on. I mean, Dave Scott wouldn't be able to tell you the top 15 players in the league. He wouldn't be able to tell you if it's a good trade or a bad trade.
No,
he's
going
to listen.
He wants
he's going to listen to
seats.
his little crew, his little like brain trust that teaches him about hockey. But the thing is that Chuck Fletcher is the one who said it could be done. And if I'm somebody who doesn't understand the business I'm running, and I've hired somebody who's got the institutional knowledge that Chuck Fletcher's supposed to have, if I'm a good owner, I'm supposed to defer to that person. That's what you always want out of an owner, right? Otherwise, you have Jerry Jones. You don't want that. Or you have Al Davis. Or even, like, to some extent, you have, like, the Brizgalov signing because of Ed Snyder. Like, you don't want your owner to be factoring in on these decisions. You want them to give the sign off. They might want the rationale behind why it's worth me spending my money on this player. But, like, he's supposed to be able to trust Chuck Fletcher to do the right thing. Fletcher doubled down multiple times, both publicly and privately, that they were going to turn this thing around fast. And when it became very evident that that was not going to become possible, he then tried to go revisionist history in a later press conference where he kind of walked back the aggressive retool line and I think attempted to try to calibrate or recalibrate the fans on what could be expected. But like at that point, it's already too late. You know, people like Dan or other season ticket holders had been told aggressive retool. When did that happen? Right around when season ticket renewals came up. They were sold a fake bill of goods. And so it's so problematic on so many levels. Not only did he not build a good team, but he flat out lied to the fan base. And then in the offseason, either realized, oh shit, my plan doesn't work, or realized, I don't have a way out of this. I don't have a way to fix this. He can't get off the bad contracts. He doesn't want to attach draft picks to actually potentially make a move that could be impactful. And then just continue to double down on boneheaded moves. Who gives Nick Delorier a no movement clause?
Well, it's a no trade.
Rasmus Ristol? Yeah.
He's got
Great.
20 teams he has to submit. I mean, he's got 10 team flexibility, you know.
Yeah, great. You know, awesome. Fantastic. You know, it's just like even in earnest trying to make that argument would sound ridiculous, right? Like
It's idiotic.
it's a shame because
I like the player, but
people deserve to have a team that they can root for. This isn't Arizona where like the team is just kind of cast off to the side. This is supposed to be a team that the city gets behind. It's supposed to be one that's supposed to embody what, you know, the blue collar Philadelphian wants to see. And what's happening and is happening quickly and much faster than I expected is one of my closest friends said to me a couple years ago, there could be a scenario where the Philadelphia Union passed the Philadelphia Flyers as the fourth most talked about team in the city. And I'm not saying it's going to happen right now. It can't. It won't happen right now. But the Union are in the process of potentially finishing the MLS season with the most points, the Supporter Shield, you know, akin to the President's Trophy. Second time in 3 seasons that could happen. Great atmosphere, cheap tickets, a lot of fun. What are the Flyers? Are they cheap? No. Is it great atmosphere? No. Is it fun? No. You know, it's sad.
And no
It's
more
sad.
Taryn Hatcher on the pregame and postgame.
Good for her. I'm sure she's going to be covering other teams in the city. And I don't blame NBC Sports Philly either. You know, like there's an argument to be made that she's gotten, you know, her reps on a team that really hasn't been relevant. And I'm sure that the network's gotten good feedback from some of the viewers who enjoy the job that she does. I have to say, like, she managed to get out at the right time. It doesn't matter what team. I mean, unless they put her on the Wings beat or something. But, like, otherwise, she's going to end up in a much better spot. She's been doing the Phillies this summer, right? She's been doing the pre and post for some, right? When Barkan's not, like, carnival barking. I mean, does she factor into the Sixers? Does she factor into, like, additional Eagle stuff? Like, I don't know. I have no idea who's going to do that job. Maybe Scotty Hartnell will take over on that side of the desk.
Yeah. Dan?
So I will bring a little bit of positivity to the
Love
show.
it.
One thing that I like about this franchise right now is the head coach. I like John Tortorella. I like the messages that he's been putting out there. So today I got in my inbox as a season ticket holder a letter that was actually Dear Dan, and it was from John Tortorella. You know, they've got the formulas. They put your name in there first. They got it right. So anyway, he basically in the letter, you know, wanted to thank the fans and said that it's the Flyers fans' passion and loyalty that made him admire this city. there's one line in there that I thought was really good, where he said, is actually 2 sentences. Every single player will be tough to play against, and above all, give an honest effort. If they don't, you won't see that player very much. Now, one of my issues with this team over the past number of seasons is there doesn't seem like there's been accountability. You'll see Nolan Patrick go out and dog it, or someone else go out and dog it, and they're right back in the lineup the next day, even though the coaches and the GM will talk about accountability. I think that John Tortorella is actually going to hold players accountable. And I'm kind of looking forward to Travis Konechny, just throwing in the towel one game and being stapled to the bench, or actually going out there and Tortorella making him do a 7-minute shift. I remember, I don't know if it was Scotty Bowman or someone made a player do that, but I'm looking forward to these players being held accountable. And, maybe he'll yell at Ivan Provorov about stop doing social media with your dog and concentrate on being a better hockey player. I just think that John Tortorella is basically going to, teach some of these players how to become men, or they're going to be gone, which is fine. If we don't think that, last offseason.
Define gone.
Traded, gone.
How?
Out of the organization.
See, that's the problem. And I don't mean to take the wind out of the sails, but that's the problem.
They could have.
Go ahead.
They could have moved Travis Konechny last offseason.
The last 2 off seasons, there were multiple teams interested in Travis Konechny and Ivan Provorov. That's off seasons and trade deadlines that they could have moved off of both of those players. They didn't. Also, Sanheim had interest, but and I love it, because I do think that if nothing else, we should all get to sit back and watch these guys be held accountable. And now, guess what? You get to suffer. We have to suffer. You have to suffer. We had to suffer through watching your garbage play, your garbage effort, and now we get to just kind of live vicariously through John Tortorella's, essentially hazing. It's all great, but at the same time, we get back to the reality of the cap, and we get back to the reality of the mess that Chuck Fletcher's made. And I don't think that this team has the kind of flexibility they would need to make a move without bringing back potentially another malcontent, another change of scenery guy, or another guy who brings back with him even longer term, because that just kind of seems to be the Chuck Fletcher special. Oh, we're going to trade off this guy who's got 2 years left on his deal and could use a change of scenery. We'll bring a 3-year guy back. It's no, dumbass. That's not the point,
You might be right, but I hope
I'm wrong.
My hope as a Flyers fan is that I don't have any hope for the next few seasons. My hope is that John Tortorella comes in, that he's here for the long haul, that he looks at this season as hey, I want to figure out what young players and veterans I think can be part of a winning team 4 years down the road, 3 years down the road. And the other guys, he makes a note of, and they get rid of him maybe during the season, maybe in the off season. My only hope, Russ, and please, don't ruin it for me, is I'm just hoping that John Tortorella is going to bring some accountability to this franchise and will somehow give hope a number of years down the road that we could have a competitive winning team.
So counterpoint, he's 64. And as much, if we were getting 54-year-old
Gene Hackman's 95.
There you go. If we were getting 54-year-old John Tortorella, I'd be 100% with you. Because I'd look at it and I'd say, you know what? The thing that Bundy called this a few weeks ago was, he said, John Tortorella cannot go on a turd flushing mission. He can't afford to do that. And what he's actually done by saying on Sirius NHL radio that he's seen massive issues since he's been in town and since he's been around the team, massive issues in the locker room. He's effectively gone on the ultimate turd flushing mission. And the shame is, unless he's got the support of everyone above him to sit guys who have term or who have money left on their deal in the event that Chuck Fletcher can't trade them, unless he's got that, he's going to look like a boob. He isn't going to look like a headstrong, savvy coach. He's going to look like a guy who's desperate. If James Van Riemsdyk goes out and puts in garbage effort, right? All right, he's got 1 year left. Chuck Fletcher couldn't figure out how to move that deal. Are you going to eat $7 million for JVR to like stay home? Maybe. And like maybe as an organization, you say that's the guy that we're going to make the example of. Maybe that's able to get you through a month, but then inevitably another vet's not going to care. Somebody's going to have to get dragged to skate zone as they probably have in the past. And you're just going to kind of sit back and go like, here it is again. Like there are certain guys on this team, Kevin Hayes. You're not going to be able to sit Kevin Hayes. Like I hope that the Kevin Hayes that we're going to get is a highly motivated Kevin Hayes who's going to realize there's a void in leadership and there's a void in, you know, big money guys who are physically healthy and able-bodied enough to play, and that he's going to kind of take some onus, to go out and not grip the stick tighter and try to force plays and just be useless, but like try to set a good example for these young guys. The ultimate thing that we should all hope for is that we see a bunch of these guys develop. But again, like the problem is, all right, great. If Owen Tippett has a breakout season, what does that mean? If some of these vets have a decent season, what does that mean? It means that you're not a top or a bottom 3 team in the league. It means that you're going to be in that weird purgatory zone where you're like just on the fringe or you're in like that 10 to 12 pick range. That's not a good spot to be in. You know what I mean? So it's just like, even the biggest positives that you could try to take from the season, still kind of lead you down a negative path, which sucks. If you had gone out and done what you should have done and trying to offload cap, even if it meant attaching some potential picks, as much as that would hurt, just to get off the money, we could go into the season and say, all right, we know that even if Owen Tippett breaks out and Morgan Frost breaks out and Joel Farabee comes back in December and he plays his ass off and like all these things happen, we're still going to be a bottom 5 or 6 team and we're still going to put ourselves in good position for the draft lottery. Like, then fine. That's an easy sell to the fan base, I think. But you almost have to root against your own team having any kind of success for you to get what the team actually needs, which is elite talent at the top of the draft. Because you haven't been able to do anything else to bring elite talent in here.
At the end of the day, Russ, I mean, the question for me is, it seems that John Tortorella has more job security than Chuck Fletcher. And if they're going to let him write that letter that Dan referenced, it probably went through some people high up in the organization, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, this year will prove to be the one that Chuck Fletcher is going to have to get shit or get off the pot and do some things in season and show that he can improvise and respond to some of the things Tortorella is doing behind the bench, like sitting certain guys and making some deals or clearing cap and coming into the reality that a rebuild is the only way out of this circumstance. And to do otherwise is just a waste of time. And he's just asking to be fired.
The organization needs to gut. It needs to gut hockey ops. Everybody's got to go. Sorry. If you have a friend who works in analytics, they got to go. You have a friend who works as a film guy. Sorry, you got to go. And this is part of the problem with keeping Chuck Fletcher. You're exactly right. John Tortorella has more job security. Why is that a problem? Because any GM who gets hired, any like next candidate who would get hired externally, would want to hire their own coach. Now, Tortorella is a great coach in theory, like could be a great turd flusher, could be great at instilling the values that you want in, a hockey team, and that could be great. But if I'm, comparing 3 or 4 other jobs that are inevitably going to pop up either during the season or in the off season, and those organizations are going to let me hire my own coach and staff and everything, or I have to come to Philadelphia where I have to keep my coach and probably keep Danny Briere as my assistant GM, even though I don't know Danny Briere's hockey mind. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you're going to get the marquee names or even like some of the best, rising stars in front offices across the league to come in for that job. It's just they genuinely need to tear it down. Everybody's got to go. Bobby Clark's got to go. Paul Holmgren's got to go. Lombardi's got to go. Everyone's got to go. Everybody. Because aside from Lombardi, nobody's ever won anything. And these guys are in some way, shape, or form responsible for Chuck Fletcher keeping his job to this point. These guys are the ones who advocated for keeping Chuck Fletcher. And you see what that's done. At some point, you have to move on. The problem is, I don't think it's going to be Dave Scott doing it. I do think that, as Anthony wrote on the site on Crossing Broad last week, I do think that Val Camillo is going to take over. Probably in the next year and a half for Dave Scott. I would not be surprised. The hope is that if she comes in and takes the reins, that she's going to clear it out. Now, the indicators behind the scenes are that she likes Danny Briere a lot. So maybe Danny Briere gets to see all the things that you don't do as a GM and does exactly the opposite and is a decent GM for this team. But the hope has to be that they're going to bring in some people who understand the modern game, can build, can figure out a way to shed salary, and get this thing turned around. There is a path to getting this turned around in 3 years, but there's going to be a lot of pain along the way. Yeah. The organization has to commit to it, and they have to be honest and transparent. That letter is a good start, but it's a lot of coach speak. And it's not necessarily anything I didn't expect a John Tortorella letter to say, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's good, but now we have to see it in action.
They need the same kind of letter to the fans, someone challenged me on Twitter. Like the Rangers did, like Toronto did, and like Chicago's doing right now. I mean, look, if you're in
they will not do it. They will not. I talked to multiple people in that organization saying the same thing. It was back around the time of the aggressive retool. Talked to a few people, and I said, like, you guys realize that you could buy yourselves some time. You could kind of build up a little bit of goodwill with the fan base if you were open, honest, and transparent, and even publicly walked back the aggressive retool. That's all it would take. We went into this. We thought we were going to be able to. The landscape changed in the offseason. We saw that we couldn't do it, and now we're looking towards the future. That's all you have to say. They're not going to do it. They will not do it. I had multiple people explain to me in no uncertain terms. There is no desire, indication that they will do anything like that.
Who ultimately makes that decision?
I can't tell you that. Like, who are the people that I talk to? I can't.
No. I'm talking about who is the one who's the brick wall. I mean, it's obvious what you're saying is correct, and most fans in the same city where we had the process where someone wanted to be hired for a 9-year contract and people were willing to swallow that. I mean, this is much more plausible.
I mean, Chuck Fletcher is not going to do it, right? Because he is the ultimate self-preservation mode GM. He has no intention of taking any blame for the mess that he has created. He has at every opportunity tried to drag in one or two or three other people who were in the room where it happened when a disastrous decision was made. You wouldn't know who Ian Anderson was, but you sure as shit knew who Ian Anderson was when the question came up about the way that you value draft picks. He went out of his way to say that Ian Anderson's the one who developed the model. When you're trying to think about whether or not you trade a pick for a player or to get off of a contract. Chuck Fletcher doesn't take the responsibility for that. He doesn't take responsibility for anything. He will sacrifice anyone he has to keep his job. So that's one of your roadblocks. The other one's ownership. I just don't think that they are willing to, in any way, shape, or form, admit that this also didn't work. They pretty much publicly showed that they didn't think Hextall worked, but they won't do it with a second straight GM. They just refuse.
Wow. Now, how does Bundy feel about Val? I know what he said in the past. He can't be too happy of that either. I mean, and he's more of a hockey guy than any of us, I guess, would be. And if he's not a big fan, thinking that I'm just going off of what he said in the past, but doesn't think that she belongs anywhere near this team or whatever. And so that doesn't give me much hope if she's going to be in charge either. But I will say this: if the inkling is that she would clean house, then it would make me feel a little bit better. But I'm still not feeling better. The Band-Aids that you need to pull on this team are 4 or 5 big salaries and get nothing back but draft picks, and just use these, Schrodinger Flyers Christmas boxes guys that we have on the team to fill the gap for a year and a half. And then when you start making your strides and you think you can do, you get in these positions, and then you sell us on this. But I don't, like you said, I don't think that's going to happen though.
Nope.
So this is like the hamster wheel. That's really
it's
what
a
it
circle
feels.
It kind of is. But you know what? Like, here's the thing. So here's the positivity. We can spin this. We can skew this positively. Okay. Everything Chuck Fletcher has done to make the team better has effectively made it worse. Okay. And if we allow him this season to make 2 or 3 more moves that are going to improve the team, he will probably send this team somehow to the bottom of the standings. They'll be the worst team. And then maybe Dave Scott retires at Christmas. Val Camillo takes over, says, you know what? I'm going to make the public happy. And I'm just going to fire Chuck Fletcher into the sun, along with everybody else. And you know what? That's a pretty nice Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa gift. I would love that. I think that's totally fine. And then we can go into an offseason with a hopefully better front office, with a very massive draft ahead of them, and a relatively important offseason ahead of them. And you hope that, and this is my other thing, I would like to see a GM change before the trade deadline. Because at that point, I feel like you would have, if Briere were the one who would get, the job, Briere and Tortorella are going to have to work together. They're going to have to from now until Fletcher's fired. And the hope is that Tortorella, as he's doing the turd flushing mission, and Briere can link up on the same players. These guys are irredeemable. Like, these guys have to go. Whatever it takes, clear them out. These, like this next tier of player, I could live with or without. And then, like, these are the guys that we want to build around. But I think that it's going to take, I think Briere, without, working alongside him day in and day out, Briere has, at least from what I've learned, been open to a lot of different ideas and is kind of a sponge when it comes to different elements of what it is to be a front office executive. And I want to imagine that he wouldn't be as thick-headed and rigid as Chuck Fletcher has been to this point. And that maybe if he takes over for the trade deadline, you are able to move. If it's Konechny, if it's Provorov, if it's like, get some of this money out so that you have a little bit of flexibility, or so that you aren't as desperate, that teams don't see that you're up against the cap when you're trying to trade James Van Riemsdyk last offseason. Create a little bit of breathing room for yourself, and you'll be amazed at what you can get on the open market. That's what this team needs to do. I just don't think it'll happen with Fletcher here. So let's all hope they start off like a garbage team. Tortorella's skewering players in the press. He's saying, this is the team I was given. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. It puts enough public pressure. Fletcher's gone. And hopefully, at some point mid-season, you can really get the process started that should have started about 18 months ago. That's a positive take on this. There is a way out, but it has to start at the front office. It has to.
Or the Holmgrens and the Clarks and all the old guard, or is that, like, for me, in my mind, they've been an impediment to a full-scale rebuild. And also a lot of the players that they bring in, like a Delorier, kind of like reek to me of that old school Flyers mentality. Like, it seems like, and part of the reason they brought in Fletcher instead, replaced Hextall, was because Hextall was too exclusive, and Fletcher apparently was more collaborative. And I thought he was kind of getting input from some of the old guard and all that kind of stuff. I mean, are you saying that group doesn't really have as much of a say?
I think that ultimately this is where I think it lies. Bob Clark has a tie to Chuck Fletcher, right? He's kind of one who brought this guy into the league. Paul Holmgren advocated for Chuck Fletcher. So those guys are compromised, in my opinion, right? Like, they have a tie, I think, on an emotional level, at least with Clark. And again, we get back to Dave Scott. He has a certain number of people that he listens to, or that he will use as a sounding board, or he'll take their input. And those two, in some way, shape, or form, their thoughts will get back to him. And so I just think they have to go, because I believe that the impediment that exists is they've stood in the way of Chuck Fletcher getting fired, and they have to go. I don't see a path forward where they're still in the wings. They don't need to be here anymore. They shouldn't be. And the funny thing is, and I'll argue with a few of the other people on press row who may or may not work for the team in some capacity. They get very animated about the fact that Bob Clark and Paul Holmgren, they're not around, they're not influencing decisions, and I always call bullshit. You don't need to be physically present to make it known to the guy who owes his job to you how you feel about something, how you feel about a player, how you feel about the way that the team is going or what the team needs. If Bob Clark picks up his phone and calls Chuck Fletcher, you think Chuck Fletcher is ignoring the call? No, he's taking that call because he knows this is a guy who's partially responsible for me getting hired. Paul Holmgren calls. He's answering that call. You know what I mean? Those guys have to, that's why this whole thing, it just needs to get taken out. The shitty thing is, it's like, then what do you replace it with? Like, then I feel like you end up with like what Pittsburgh's got. You know, like I don't think you need another one of the hockey lifers to come in and like become the president of hockey ops. Like, I don't think you need that. I think you need to actually do due diligence, and you need to try to identify the next big thing in front office executives. You know, eventually somebody has to give a shot to either a younger or a rising star in those ranks. Tampa Bay and Colorado just went out and built super teams, right? And they're not the only teams that seem light years ahead of the competition. Are we going to make the argument that there's one executive on each of those teams who has any intelligence or any ability to build a team? No. There are other people who've been spending years under that learning tree who are looking for an opportunity. Those are the people you should be going after. That's the way you build a winning front office, and ultimately how you turn this thing around and build a winning team. Until this organization is willing to do that, we will continue to see this like purgatory team. And it sucks, and nobody's going to enjoy it. And that's like, that's the shame. So the positive spin that I said I was going to bring is all it takes is a clear out. And at least you then reinvigorate the fan base with hope. That's what you need to do. Let the fans go into the season believing Tortorella is going to crack skulls and that this new front office is going to sell off the bad parts in the offseason and at the trade deadline. That's what you need to do right now. Immediately, or in a month, or 2 months. That's what has to happen. Then you'll get butts and seats. Maybe.
Maybe, but the thing is, you can't be this bad and this expensive. Something has to give, and it's the expense. Like you're saying, you got to clear contracts, even if it's painful in the short term, even if it costs draft picks. You'll never get out of this. This is something Ron Hextall actually did a fairly good job of in the very beginning. Finding a way to get rid of Nick Grossman and some other really tough contracts. And we need that kind of ingenuity in a general manager, or else it's going to be a spin cycle of mediocrity or worse.
Let me ask you guys, because you have a little bit of a larger frame of reference on this. Can you think of a time that, like, going into a Flyers season that you felt is down, not only about the season that's coming, but like about like the next 2 to 3 years with a team?
Oh, nothing even close.
For me, I go back, 50 years. But I mean,
that's what I'm saying. You have a bigger frame of reference. Like,
after 89, I would say 79.
89. That's what I'm saying. 89.
Right. After they were done with the Chelios hitting Brian Propp and all that, in 90 and 91, right before that little 2 or 3 year window where Russ Farwell was the GM, right before they went out and got Lindros. It's funny because I had a back and forth with somebody who thinks the 90s were the worst hockey, the worst era. And I said, that's ridiculous. He said they were out of the playoffs for 5 years. He said, but you had 2 years with a generational talent, and you had Rod Rindamore. You had hope. You could see a pathway out of it. There is no pathway. This is by far and away the worst tenure in Flyers hockey. I don't know how anyone could say anything else because outside of 20 for about a 4-month period where they played like a kind of sort of dark horse cup contender, it's really been dry after 2012. They've just been maybe making the playoffs, couldn't win a round. They finally win in 20. They're a nothing team, and now they're 61 points. And their ceiling this year, if everything went right, was 80 or 85 points. That's still out of the playoffs.
Which is still a bad scenario because it puts you in that purgatory zone.
Exactly.
Right? It puts you right in draft hell. The thing that I have said for years is that the Claude Giroux era is Allen Iverson. It's the Allen Iverson Sixers. The difference is that, like, I think Iverson was a flawed player, but he was a league MVP, and he was arguably one of the best 10 players in the league for multiple seasons. I don't think Claude Giroux was that guy. He had, one really great season that you could say he got snubbed of being a finalist. But like, it's a lot of years where you didn't build a team around your star the right way. You mismanaged contracts. You mismanaged the way that you built teams, and you ultimately put the team in a quagmire or in a purgatory of, horrible drafting, weird cap space issues, lack of flexibility to make moves. But even that, guys, like, here's the worst part, right? Like, we just spent how many years with Claude Giroux with a bubble playoff team? But at least you would go into the season and say, well, it's the Anthony Sanfilippo model. It's you never know. You make the playoffs, anything can happen. There was St. Louis after all. This ain't that.
Nah, but St. Louis won rounds several years in a row, and you could see maybe it could come together. There's nothing here.
Yeah, it's here's the negative spin. The best thing that could happen to the team is that, like, Kevin Hayes plays out of his mind. Cam Atkinson plays out of his mind, right? And they do it for 2 months. The team is, like, far more competitive than they should be. And they accrue a bunch of points that you don't want them to get. The only positive in that is, all right, then a team might trade for Cam Atkinson. Nobody's going to trade for Kevin Hayes. But, like, if you can put your vets in a position where, like, they're at least somewhat successful to start the year, you might actually have a shot to clear out cap space. Even Chuck Fletcher might be able to do it. If these guys are hurt, the flip side is you aren't going to accrue the points because you're going to have all the young guys playing. The positive is you're going to see them play. The negative is you have no trade, no trade equity with anybody because the guys you're trying to offload are injury prone. Problematic, guys.
Yeah. So this Saturday, they actually played their first exhibition game versus the Bruins at the Wells Fargo Center, 7 p.m. And then they opened the regular season after about 5 more exhibition games on October 13th versus the Devils, an organization that went through some pain, and they got some top-level talents. Now, there's a team where they're not really doing much. You keep expecting more, but there's hope. There's something there.
Rigging the lottery will do that for you, though.
Well, that's a whole other thing.
It was a very rigged draft. Horribly rigged. Yeah. New Jersey didn't deserve these picks, believe me. And many people tell me, they say it was a frozen envelope, frozen balls, Bettman's balls, very frozen, not like mine. So sad, so rigged. They hate the Flyers. They hate the Flyers.
Come on, man. But anyway. That was a good job. So the Flyers have some of the worst center depth, and they latched on Artem Anisimov, a former Columbus Blue Jacket, among many other teams he played for, before they heard the Couturier news, from what I understand. And it looks like he could be as high as their second-line center, maybe their third-line center. And he also signed Dominic Roussel to a PTO. Why would they do that? Why is Zach McEwen? Why did they sign Zach McEwen again?
I don't want to crap on the guy, okay? Because his career is over. But the Nolan Patrick pick has caused a cascading effect and a trickle down, if you want to call it that, that is really at the heart of what's wrong with the team. That one pick going awry caused you to spend ridiculous money on a 3C that you tried to sell as a 2C. It eventually led to you believing that you had enough center depth that you could potentially move on from an emergency plan who was playing at wing and was your captain, who did have to go, but like maybe it would have been good to have that flexibility for a few weeks to start this season. That move, unfortunately, and I'm not even crapping on the kid, but like he didn't draft himself. That miss is a big reason why the team is in the mess that they're in. And I just hope at some point this team's going to get enough. There has to be offsetting karma. The Sixers had this. Markelle Fultz forgot how to shoot a basketball. Tyrese Maxey is everything that Markelle Fultz was supposed to be. Nolan Patrick is probably never going to play again. We need Nolan Patrick. Maybe Owen Tippett is going to be Nolan Patrick. Maybe he's going to be like the young impact forward. And we're going to go, hey, for once in this godforsaken city's life, we were the ones to benefit from the change of scenery guy. Maybe, guys. That's positivity you can believe in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan, do you like Owen Tippett?
Do I like? Yeah, I do like Owen Tippett.
There we go.
I think that one of Owen Tippett, Morgan Frost, or Cam York, I think one of them will take a big step forward this year. So I don't know. We'll see who it is. But like you said, it's hard to find things to root for because I want to root for this team. I want them to be a tough team to play against. I want them to win some competitive games. But I also want a chance to get a player in the draft who could greatly impact the trajectory of the franchise. So it's a tough spot that they've put us in. You don't want to root against your own team. I'll be there opening night and the second game, and I want to be able to cheer when they score goals and be happy about it. But somewhere deep down, you're kind of thinking to yourself, man, wouldn't it be better if they were, not playing well? So
what's the worst goal song the team could pick?
Are they doing a new one for this year?
I don't know, but we should root for the worst song because at least then the players won't think that you're booing them for scoring. You're booing them because you're booing the song. That's a good way to prevent yourself from getting your players to hate your fans. So guys, I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. That's a banger though. So I don't know, maybe we shouldn't use that as the goal song. I think a lot of people get really hyped for that. Like the 90s kid in me gets very excited. I think about like being at the roller rink, with the lasers going and everything. Yeah. And like
the room you're in right now, the folks listening can't see it, but Russ has built
Barbie. Let's go party.
He's built a disco ball or a spaceship or a strip club in his whatever.
Yeah, either
room.
that or a black light poster with a bong or something,
Wait, you guys ready for this? Wait, watch this. When I talk, this will match the sound in the room. There it is.
You paid for that.
I saw this in a movie once. Things did not turn out well, Russ.
Yes.
You're going to get murdered in that room.
But guys, the porn stash makes it, though. The porn stash makes it. At the front, I was just watching Bohemian Rhapsody before we came on, and it's you're looking good there. Love it.
I might have to go as Freddie Mercury for Halloween. I think
Marvelous,
I dig it.
That could happen.
Yeah,
I'll be like a dad bod Freddie Mercury though. I need evidence. Can somebody find me a picture of Freddie Mercury when he was like 20, 30 pounds overweight? And then I can just like keep that picture in my pocket and I'll just be like, this is the era I actually method acted this. I had a 6-pack, but then I worked my way into this model because nobody ever goes this way.
I mean, no disrespect to Freddie, but you're not going to find latter day heavy Freddie, if you know what I'm saying. Toward the end there. So.
Hey, Isaiah, I got to jump off here. I got some stuff I got to deal with.
Yeah, Dan, thanks for.
It's always fun. It's always fun having Russ on.
Yes,
we brought positivity. There were some positive moments today.
Well, I'm going to let you guys continue on with the positivity.
Yeah, we're not going to be too much longer, but yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dan. You can follow Dan at dsilver88 at dsilver88 on Twitter. We got to talk about the backup goalie because you want to talk about really, really good news. Oh, that's right. Oh, well. They're so capped out after a 61-point season that they didn't have money to have plan B for a backup goaltender and then have unproven Felix Sandstrom and Troy Grosenick, who's the next second coming of Michael Layton, apparently. Never really good enough to make it in the NHL, but he's an AHL All-Star, so hey.
You know what the shame is? And I am not reporting something here. I want to be like a million times over clear. This is not reporting anything. That Team Canada thing is not over yet. And the hope, if you're a Flyers fan, is that nothing comes out of that. Mm-hmm. and again, I'm not saying that there is something. I'm not saying that there's going to be a development that's going to involve Carter Hart. But until that situation's resolved, and until that entire thing is closed and settled, you just almost have a pit in your stomach about like the way that everything else has gone. That would be the cherry on the shit sundae, you know? The thing that I think has me the most upset from the offseason is what happened with Fedotov.
Yeah.
And I know I have, Ant has, Bundy has. We have all tried to get an answer on who thought it was a good idea to have the kid sign a contract given what was happening in the country at the time. And keep in mind, I think it was 3 months, 2.5 months after the invasion of Ukraine started that they signed the kid. And I'm not saying that it was on the Flyers to know if he had met his military requirement. But boy, oh boy. You know, it...
Does he ever play again, Russ? Is he going to make it over here? Because apparently...
over here, I would say no, right? Because, you know, and again, it's so hard to know because how reliable are different media outlets? You know, what's true, what isn't? If ultimately he signed an extension and is going to get moved to another KHL team, that's pretty indicative of the fact that, like, the reports about him dodging or whatever were accurate, and that this really was a political move.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Well, what's the alternative scenario? Should they have tried to sneak him out, or should he have made up a ruse and try to get out of Russia, and then he could have signed a deal?
I would have gone one of two ways. Looking now, 2020 hindsight, right?
Sure.
It's either he gets out of there. I don't know what the mechanics of that look like because he was under contract to CSKA when it happened. So I can't really imagine that he was going to like skirt out during the season or like skirt out during, I don't know what kind of off-season workouts they have and everything. If he was still under contract to CSKA, then you should have just let him sit for a year. You shouldn't have put him in a compromised position. I'm sure that the Flyers didn't think that there was going to come a situation where like this was going to happen, right? Because I don't think anybody would have seen this coming. But at the same time, it's really important to note things had already started and had been going on for months. It wasn't as if the Flyers had Fedotov sign a contract and then 2 months later, Russia decides to move in on Ukraine. That's not how this happened. It was Russia first, then Fedotov. At some point, you have to say, like, either he's got to be stateside and committed to being here, like you're not going back, if they're going to pursue you for this, you know, military, whatever the hell, like the military requirement. I don't know what
requirement.
It's either that or it's, listen, Ivan, we want to have you here this year, but we don't think it's safe, or we think that there's a chance that something can go sideways for you, and we don't want to put you in that position. Was
there a thought that maybe like he needed to have a work visa and have a job in order to get in? Is that something that might have been a possibility?
I genuinely don't know.
I
can't imagine. Yeah. I can't imagine that was it, though. I genuinely think that the Flyers thought, we're going to bring him in. There's no way that Russia's going to do something stupid, because we're a high-profile team in a high-profile sports league, and it makes no sense for Russia to make an example of an athlete who's going to come play in the U.S. It makes no sense. But around that same time is the Brittany Griner thing, right? Yeah. So it's not as if there hadn't, and I'm pretty sure she was first. I could be wrong. Yeah. I don't have the timeline in front of me.
But that was like hash or
But
whatever.
I'm pretty sure that Brittany Griner, who had been playing in Russia, an American citizen who'd been playing in Russia because the WNBA doesn't pay well, and the Russian league, I guess, does, or one of the European leagues do for women's basketball. To me, that was enough of an indicator to say, oh boy, this could be problematic. The difference is American breaking Russian law is what they said. She's there versus Fedotov, Russian citizen who would be leaving to go play in the U.S. I can't say that like the Flyers are 100% to blame in the situation. I mean, Fedotov was living there, was probably aware of what was going on. You know, does some of the responsibility fall on him or his family or his agent? I don't know. But it's a shame because on a hockey level, I think Fedotov could have really been something for the team. And it's not to say that like in a year, if things kind of clear up, you're able to bring him over, you know, next year, maybe. The main thing is like, let's make sure that the guy's okay because nobody seems to have heard from him. Nobody seems to be able to confirm where he is or the chain of events that led to him apparently being enlisted and sent wherever the hell he got sent. On a hockey level, it would be nice to have him here and to have him stateside and to have him be the backup or competing for the starting job. That was your best option. And now, you know, the guys they have as a backup, it's honestly an affront to hockey. It's an affront to the league and to an organization like the Flyers. This is about as stupid and as mismanaged of a situation as you can have a backup goalie. It is so grossly irresponsible to once again, maybe more than ever, throw the bulk of games, 60 plus, Carter Hart's going to have to play for a bad team and is going to have mental lapses and is certainly going to have a mental struggle this year, letting in as many goals as he's going to because the team sucks, or having good games, but ultimately losing a lot of them because his team can't score. It's easy for us to say we want the team to be bad and make the lottery. It's another thing to be the guy who's in net for more than 2/3 of the games, or 2/3 of the games, give or take, or more than that, right? 60 out of 80, 75% of the games.
Yep.
It's easy for us. It's just they put him in such a bad position. You know, I don't understand. There is not a single person who can make an excuse for it. Even the Stepford fans, or even the media people who will say whatever the team wants them to say, cannot rationalize going into a season with this as the backup goaltending situation.
Yeah.
I can't explain it.
No, it just screams temporary circumstance. And maybe Felix Sandstrom will surprise us. We know the other guy is basically an AHL player. This is another failing by Chuck Fletcher, like you said. And somebody's going to have to deal with this. This has to be the season that marks a change for them, or I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. That's kind of where we are with so many things. It's just, these are the moves that you would expect from that young executive that the team took a chance on, that thought he was going to outsmart the league. This is not what you were supposed to be getting yourself into when you hire the hockey lifer, the guy whose family, you know, has family heritage as a front office executive in this league. These are rookie moves. These are rookie mistakes. And they're being executed by somebody who I don't have good things to say about.
He's out of his element. He's out of his depth. He clearly has not kept up with what the league is versus when he joined Bob Clark in Florida or whatever he actually started in the league. I mean, look, it's so obvious. You can point to so many junctures where, hey, you know what? Here's an opportunity to move on, create flexibility, regain the leverage that you've lost in virtually every negotiation. Now's the time to strike. And he just keeps doubling down on stupid. And until he's replaced, I don't know what else to say.
This is giving me an idea. I think this is going to be the topic for Snow the Goalie this week.
Yeah.
Is Chuck Fletcher quiet quitting? Have you seen the articles about what quiet quitting is?
Yes.
You know,
I can
is
see
Chuck
it.
Fletcher quiet quitting? Like, is he putting in the effort? Is he sending the signals that he doesn't really care, and he's just kind of daring the team to fire him? And meanwhile, he's working on things he truly does care about. I don't know what they are, but is Chuck Fletcher quiet quitting? Maybe Chuck Fletcher is the smartest guy in the room after all. He didn't have to do anything. Still get paid, and his boss apparently loves him.
Is there a freezer in the Flyers kitchen or something? Because
little pregame stuff because somebody's getting the French fries. That's for sure. Oh my gosh! Kids at home, you don't want to know the answer to this one. Oh my dear Lord!
I mean, look, nobody can hear you. It's vacuum sealed. Yeah. So I don't know what Chuck Fletcher is. It's just time. It's just time. So listen, it's not going to happen right away, but hopefully a really nice Christmas present would be
Chris Mahana Kwanzaa. Chris Mahana Kwanzaa. Let's open it up to everything.
I mean, I'm Jewish, so they could fire him a little bit for 8 days.
Rosh Hashanah isn't like Rosh Hashanah starting? There's no gifts with there's no gifts with Rosh Hashanah, right? But like maybe we'll get a Rosh Hashanah gift. All of us.
Well, that's the 26th. That's next week. But
when's Yom Kippur?
Is the Day of Atonement. So I mean,
there you go.
That'll be the night of the 4th, October the 4th.
We sit here, and the Philadelphia Flyers and Comcast Spectacor atone for their sins, and they send Chuck Fletcher into the sun. Sorry, honey, this year we're not going to have the oil for the menorah. We are dousing Chuck Fletcher in it, and we are throwing him into the sun. That will keep the lamp lit for 8 years. That's what we need.
There you go.
Fletcher. Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
So it is written, so it shall be done.
Guys, I swear, if we go through another season with this guy in charge and we enter next offseason, I don't know.
Harakiri's on the table.
I will be a shrieking banshee until they do something. I can't.
We'll find a guy that knows a guy.
I genuinely can't. I cannot envision a scenario in which he keeps his job into next offseason. The only thing I can think is Couturier's injury maybe gives him a little bit of an excuse. If Hayes goes out, like if a bunch of these vets go out with significant injuries or significant injury time, or Farabee gets pushed back farther, Ellis doesn't play, or Ellis shows up at the end of the year, could this organization screw this up and say, well, Chuck hasn't had he didn't have a fair shake at this? Maybe. No. The hope is Tortorella is going to get in the ear of ownership. That is where you almost have to hope that Tortorella is going. I will say to you guys, I think that we will get at least 1 or 2 veiled shots at the front office within the first month. And then I think it will get more vocal around Christmas. Something along the lines of, well, we're doing as good as we can with what we have. That's the first thing I would listen for. And then eventually, I think that we could get a more direct shot. I think that's the number one storyline to watch for going into the season. If you're looking for legitimate change, how long until Tortorella publicly excoriates Chuck Fletcher? Yeah. And it might be sooner than you think.
Well, you can only make good food with good ingredients. So it's the same thing. And sometimes those, you get spoiled ingredients or you can't use them because it's not the right recipe. And that's just how it is. And if you got to change vendors, so to speak, or ingredients to make sure you put out a good product in chef terms, and that's what you got to do. And that's what you got to do.
That is going to be the soap opera. You notice that Gritty has almost completely disappeared, and this is all about John Tortorella, which is right.
Shocking.
Yeah.
It's funny
that's
because
all you got right now.
It's funny because I'm not trying to say that we are responsible for any of this, but there are a lot of talking points that we had on our show for the better part of a year and a half that we continued to beat the drum about. And all of a sudden, a lot of those things got enacted. Like the last few months of the season and throughout the offseason, like some of those things have kind of gone into effect. It makes you think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good old Gritty. You know what? I don't hate Gritty.
I don't hate him. I think if this team would have been a better product, I mean, look at the Phillies. When the Phillies are grooving and they're doing good, you're like, oh, look, it's the Fanatic in there. You're all excited. But when that's all the entertainment that you got, then it becomes a problem. It's more of a distraction. And then when ownership feels like they can distract you even more by throwing him everywhere, then it becomes annoying.
The good thing is that, and this is, I said this on our show, and I will continue to say this. This can be another one of the Russ gives the Flyers free bit of advice that he will not get compensated for, but probably should. What the video team needs to do and what the social media team needs to do is scrap every plan they had for this season, because none of it's going to matter. And what they need to do is build equity, emotional equity with the fan base and the young players that they're going to presumably try to build the team around. They should be filming behind the scenes with Owen Tippett and with Morgan Frost and with Joel Farabee.
Yeah.
And they should be building that emotional tie that, you know what? I just went on StubHub and I saw tickets are only $15 tonight. They're going to lose, but you know what? I learned this thing about Owen Tippett and I want to go root for the guy. You know, he had, I know nothing. This is not like player X. Let's use player X. I didn't know player X had a really rough childhood. He's doing great charity work. You know what? $15. I'm going to go. I might even buy a player X jersey. You know, I might buy a player X shirt. I'm going to go and I'm going to cheer for this guy. You know, I'm not saying it's going to happen, and it obviously isn't going to be enough that it's going to make a meaningful impact in attendance, but the organization would benefit in an immense way if they tried to connect with fans on a different level when it comes to these players, because the talent alone is not going to be enough to get people to buy in. But if you tell a good enough story in pro wrestling terms, you can overlook somebody being a mid-card person, and that can elevate them. That emotional tie that you feel can elevate them in the hearts and minds of those fans. That's what they desperately need to do. I will be very interested to see if they're going to do it. We need to walk away from this season saying, I know so much more about players X, Y, and Z, and I am comfortable and confident in their ability to be the next core. That's the team and organization and social media team's responsibility. Get through the season. That's going to probably be a bad one, but at least give fans something positive to hang on to in some capacity. That's it.
And plant some seeds. Yep. And that'll hopefully pay dividends down the road.
And fertilize that soil. Isn't that what Nick Sirianni said last year? And everybody laughed. Yeah. You plant seeds, you fertilize, you water those plants, and eventually they're going to bloom.
Yeah.
Right now the soil looks pretty decrepit, but you know what? All it takes is a tiller coming through, a little bit more topsoil. Get that soil healthy, and then start planting the seeds.
Yep.
There's a way.
Yep.
That's it. Guys. Starts in the front office. Russ, I just want to thank you so much for stopping by. It was a different kind of show, but I think we went to the heart of the matter, because ultimately we can talk about whether Tanner Lazinski is going to be able to nab a spot on the roster. And yeah, we'll do some of that too. But I think this show is too important after the Couturier injury that we addressed a lot of this stuff. So
yeah, one last thing there. The good thing is, a lot of these guys, even if they don't make the team out of camp, they're probably going to get time this year. Yeah. That's another thing you can look forward to. If there's a guy that you really love in preseason, or that you read good things about, in camp, chances are they're going to have their shot if they can stay healthy. That could be one good thing to look for this year. I know more than anything, I'm looking forward to seeing what some of these young guys can do with actual meaningful minutes in important stretches. Get minutes logged at the NHL level, get used to the speed and the physicality, learn what you need to work on for your body, your mind, your skill for next season. That's one thing we can all kind of look forward to. #positivity.
Absolutely. I'm just an example of that before we go. I look forward to Cam York getting some top 4 time. I look forward to Owen Tippett finally establish himself in the league. I mean, he's probably got the best speed, straight line speed on the team, and generates more high quality chances on his own than anybody else. And there's something to look forward to. I mean, and hopefully it'll work out. I mean, these are the types of things that fans are going to have to look forward to, though, as the season moves along. So where can people find you on social, and what you got coming up?
Well, of course, you can find me on Twitter at JoyOnBroad. It's a great Twitter account to follow. A lot of positivity and hilarity. There's also pro wrestling takes there. There's lots about Philadelphia sports. I can keep you posted on legal online sports betting. And then, of course, Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast, People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, Pampers Podcast, the Only Flyers Podcast. You can find Snow the Goalie wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch the episodes on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel. Have a lot of fun with Ant and Bundy. Again, I say the Only Flyers Podcast, as we've established in the past. You guys are the only Puckcast. So we're swimming in different streams, but we are swimming in the same direction. And, always happy to chat with you guys. I do feel like this was a little bit more positive. There is a way to get out of this. Off with his head. Off with his head. That's what we need.
So, Russ, you're a big. A little quick thing. You're a big wrestling guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here wearing an AEW shirt.
Yeah,
Grand Slam is going on right now. I was at Grand Slam last year, and I didn't go to Grand Slam just so I could be on the O&B Puckcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's
now. Do you watch a show on? I think it's on Stars. Heels with Stephen Amell.
I started watching I think I got through the first episode. I just don't have time to watch TV. This is my problem.
Yeah, I know.
But the first episode that I saw was really, really interesting.
Oh, it's fantastic. It meshes up all the stuff that you heard about Terry Funk, Bruiser Brett, all the old school guys, and kind of wraps it around this whole storyline between two brothers, which is fantastic. It's great. I'm still looking forward to the second season. I just figured I meant to ask you that last time we talked and I forgot. So I wanted to make sure I got
the thing that freaks me out is the brother was Bjorn on
Vikings or something.
On Vikings.
Yeah.
So every time I see him, I just want to say where is Ragnar Lothbrok? I can't. That was the one thing I struggled with on that show. There are some people who can never do another role because every time you look at them, you think of the one character, and that actor will always be Bjorn. Yeah. I will never see anything else. I expect him to pull out an axe and to lob somebody's head off, or slice through their shoulder. But I at some point I will get back around to heels. I will promise you. That is my promise to you.
Okay. Giddy up. Awesome.
Russ, thanks so much. And hey, if anything really breaks, some of the things we talk about, we gotta have you back on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, something broke in poor Sean Couturier, so it stands to reason something else could break at some point this season. Who's it going to be next, guys? Who's it going to be? Wish him well, by the way. Wish Couturier well.
Oh, yeah.
Nice, good guy, well liked by everybody in that locker room and people who cover the team. Like that's one guy that you hate to see this happen to. So obviously wishing him the best as he tries to recover here. It's not even a hockey thing at this point. I think this is a quality of life thing. You hope that what he's going to go through here, and if he has to have surgery or whatever they end up doing, you just want the guy to be healthy and to live a positive life, whether or not that includes hockey or not. So,
amen to that.
We'll see you guys.
All right, you take care.
Catch you later.
But okay, so Chef. Yeah, there was a lot of things that could have been on the agenda. I just want to say something about Sean Couturier and his injury, because I have heard comments that span the spectrum of, hey, you know what? Today a spine is like a groin, and as soon as I was very surprised when I heard that, it really depends whether he had a fusion last time, or did they just clean out some disc material that might have been impinging on a nerve. Mm-hmm. Now, if he had problems again in that area, and now he needs a fusion, then that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
And a herniated disc is not a big deal if you're not having pain. There are people walk around, this, that don't have pain, and they get an MRI for something else, and it might show up and.
It's a surprise. Yeah.
It's a surprise. And it doesn't mean anything. But if you require treatment that corresponds to a film like an MRI or a CAT scan or something like that, and you go under the knife for your spine, it's a big freaking deal. Let's not, I have personal experience, and as Chef, I know that that's something that is looming in your future.
I keep doing physical therapy, trying to put it off as long as I can.
So,
And that's what they tell me is probably the best thing. Wait until you absolutely have to have it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So I can relate to what Russ was talking about in terms of quality of life. They're getting a second opinion. I had many opinions with my circumstance, and yeah, they might come up with something different. There are a lot of different procedures they can do, and certainly getting a disc replacement, especially in the lumbar region, is much more established than some of the things that just happened with Jack Eichel, and of course recently with Joel Farabee. And I don't want to get too deep in that weeds, but I just wanted to clarify, unless you know what the procedure was that he underwent last time, and you know what the circumstances, if they're related or not, there's really no way to know. We just have to hope that we're getting a straight story from whoever, Yeah. I think we're going to wrap it there. We'll probably come back in about a week or 10 days, and we'll probably have a little bit more standard look based on some of the action. Because look, it's the John Tortorella show more than ever, right?
Absolutely. I can't wait. I can't wait at least for that. There are some, like Rush was saying, there are some positives. I'm looking forward to see more of the younger kids and less of the older product that wasn't getting it done or was getting stagnant even. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see a look. It's at least it's something I haven't seen before. And I'm very optimistic about because we've always complained about having players develop the right way. And I think Torts is a good start in the right direction of having so many of these young players that will have to make the team just strictly for cap purposes. We didn't even talk about that. A lot of these kids are going to be on there strictly because of cap. If they can get, the tutelage under Tortorella, I think it would be a win for them and the coach as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's got to recognize what he has and what he doesn't have, and he's going to have to really rely on some patience, because this is a year that they have to separate from Chuck Fletcher. And that dynamic between Tortorella and Fletcher, to me, I agree with Russ. At some point, there's going to be a widening gap. There's no way you can just keep doing the same thing and expecting things to change. Just not going to work. And with that, Chef, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Chef to the Left B on Twitter. That's Chef to the Left B.
You got it.
You can chat at me or yell at me, or a lot of times people don't agree with what I think, but it's always good conversation at least.
Yeah, and you can check me out, Isaiah, on Twitter as well, and at Isaiah, ISAIAH _520. Isaiah, don't forget the _ 520, and hit us up with your opinion on, of course, at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. I'll go a couple rounds with you, but once I've stated my opinion, or whoever is on the account, we generally leave that account. We don't go on long binges back and forth, because
what's the point?
So much. Yeah,
you've already stated your opinion. You can't.
I've stated my opinion.
Yeah, you can't go anymore. So
yeah. The whole thing about somebody saying the '90s were the worst era, I'm like, the ride with Lindros was worth the fall.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the Legion of Doom alone, the dominance of that line, is worth 10 years of the milquetoast nonsense that we've had to deal with this last decade. And with that, everybody, until next time, take care.